100 ambushes, countless bullets, and yet he lived. How did he survive? In the bitter cold of a war-torn Europe, where every shadow could mean death and every whisper could signal an enemy approaching, there was one man whose survival seemed almost supernatural. He was not a general commanding legions, nor a tank driver rolling through fire. He was a sniper, a lone figure perched in the forests and ruins, a ghost who appeared where the enemy least expected him. From the moment he picked up his first rifle, he had known the stakes. Each mission, each patrol, each reconnaissance could be his last, but he moved with a calculated precision that left even seasoned soldiers in awe. His life was a constant balance between patience and instinct, between waiting for the perfect moment and reacting instantly to threats that would have frozen others in place. Every step he took was measured, every breath controlled. The forest around him was both his ally and his enemy. He knew how to read the wind, how to sense vibrations through the earth, how to notice the subtle glint of sunlight on a distant scope. These skills were not learned overnight. They were honed through countless near-death encounters, each one teaching him something vital: when to move, when to hide, when to strike. His enemies had no idea who they were facing. To them, he was a phantom, a rumor whispered among soldiers about the sniper who cannot be killed. And yet, to survive 100 ambushes, to come back again and again, required more than skill. It required an almost obsessive understanding of human nature, of how fear could be manipulated, of how panic could betray a man's position before a single shot was fired. His first known encounter with an ambush came on a misty morning in 1942. He was scouting ahead of his unit when a hidden squad of enemy soldiers opened fire. Bullets tore through the undergrowth around him, splintering trees and sending dirt flying into the air. Most men would have dropped to the ground, hearts hammering, frozen in shock, but he did neither. He moved with purpose, sliding behind the remains of a fallen tree, counting each enemy step, each movement. Within moments, he picked off 2 attackers with calm, precise shots before slipping silently into the trees and disappearing from sight. His comrades later found him miles away, alive, almost as if the ambush had never happened. From that day forward, his reputation began to grow, not just among his allies, but among his enemies as well. Every ambush after that became a test of his ingenuity. He learned to predict enemy tactics, to set traps that would turn the hunters into the hunted. He would crawl for hours through mud and snow, his body numb and his fingers stiff, just to gain the perfect vantage point. And when the enemy thought they had him cornered, he would vanish, leaving behind nothing but the echo of a shot and the fear of an invisible predator. He survived not because he was lucky, though luck played its part, but because he understood the battlefield as if it were an extension of his own senses. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow, every distant cough became a data point, a piece of a puzzle he had to solve to live another day. What made him truly extraordinary was his mindset. Most soldiers, after surviving 1 or 2 close calls, would carry the memory as a burden, a weight of anxiety that could break even the strongest men. But he treated each ambush as a lesson, as a clue to the enemy's weaknesses. He analyzed every encounter, replayed it in his mind, and used that knowledge to outthink the next threat. By the time he had survived his 10th ambush, he had already begun to anticipate patterns, to foresee the enemy's moves before they even made them. And so it continued, 20, 30, 50 ambushes, and still he survived. He became a living legend among his comrades, a symbol of hope and resilience in a war defined by chaos and death. The forest, the ruins, the snow-covered fields, they were all part of his domain. To the enemy, they were deadly traps. To him, they were familiar territory, a place where he could dictate the rules. He understood fear, not just as something that affected him, but as a weapon to wield against others. Every encounter, every ambush became a psychological battle as much as a physical one. And through it all, he carried a quiet, unshakable confidence, a belief that he would survive where others could not. By the end of his first year in the field, he had faced dozens of ambushes, each one more dangerous than the last, and yet he lived. Every enemy who thought they had him cornered underestimated him. Every plan designed to end his life failed. How he survived was no mystery to him. It was strategy, skill, and an instinct honed to perfection. But to the soldiers on both sides of the conflict, it seemed impossible. He was a man out of legend, a sniper who could survive 100 ambushes, and each one added to the myth that surrounded him, a myth that would grow with every passing day of the war. The forest, the ruins, the snow-covered fields, they were all part of his domain. To the enemy, they were deadly traps. To him, they were familiar territory, a place where he could dictate the rules. He understood fear, not just as something that affected him, but as a weapon to wield against others. Every encounter, every ambush became a psychological battle as much as a physical one. And through it all, he carried a quiet, unshakable confidence, a belief that he would survive where others could not. By the end of his first year in the field, he had faced dozens of ambushes, each one more dangerous than the last, and yet he lived. Every enemy who thought they had him cornered underestimated him. Every plan designed to end his life failed. How he survived was no mystery to him. It was strategy, skill, and an instinct honed to perfection. But to the soldiers on both sides of the conflict, it seemed impossible. He was a man out of legend, a sniper who could survive 100 ambushes, and each one added to the myth that surrounded him, a myth that would grow with every passing day of the war.
The morning mist clung to the forest like a shroud, hiding every movement, every breath, every heartbeat. To most soldiers, this silence would have been suffocating, a prelude to disaster. But to him, it was opportunity, a canvas upon which he could craft survival, a stage for a deadly dance between life and death. He had learned early that the battlefield was not just a place of bullets and explosions, but a theater of perception. The enemy could be manipulated, led into traps, or left disoriented by a single well-placed shot. Each ambush he survived was not mere luck, it was a calculated exercise in reading human behavior under extreme stress. In one such encounter, he found himself surrounded on 3 sides by enemy troops, their guns trained on every conceivable exit. The first instinct of any soldier might have been to fire blindly, to hope for a miracle. But he had no need for miracles, he had preparation. Sliding into the undergrowth, he synchronized his breathing with the rhythm of the forest. Leaves rustled under the soft tread of his boots, yet he moved as though he were part of the shadows themselves. With meticulous observation, he noted the position of each enemy, the cadence of their steps, the angle of their weapons. He could predict the instant they would raise their rifles, when their trigger fingers would tighten. And when that moment came, he struck with precision, taking down 2 adversaries before they even realized where the shots had come from. Each surviving ambush added to his growing reputation. Among his comrades, he was revered, whispered about in mess halls and around campfires as a ghost who defied death. But it was not just his skill with the rifle that set him apart. It was his ability to endure fear, to transform panic into clarity. In the chaos of gunfire, the echo of nearby explosions, the screams of men struck down, he remained focused. Where others would falter, he thrived. His mind was a fortress of calm, each ambush a test he passed with ruthless efficiency. The psychological aspect of survival became as crucial as his marksmanship. He learned to use the enemy's assumptions against them. If they believed he had retreated, he remained nearby, observing, analyzing, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. If they assumed he was dead, he exploited that complacency, moving silently through their ranks, a phantom whose presence was felt only in the sudden sting of a bullet. He began to understand that war was as much a game of perception as it was of firepower. The most dangerous enemy was often the one who could anticipate, adapt, and remain invisible until the decisive moment. One winter, deep in the frost-bitten forests of Eastern Europe, he faced perhaps his most harrowing ambush yet. Enemy soldiers had anticipated his movements, laying a trap that was meant to be inescapable. He crawled through inches of snow, his rifle clutched tightly, his eyes scanning every shadow. The moment they opened fire, bullets tore through the air around him, some striking the trees, some embedding in the ground inches from his body. Pain was a constant companion, cold a relentless enemy, yet he remained undeterred. With painstaking precision, he returned fire only when he could guarantee a hit, using his surroundings to mask every movement. By the time the ambush was over, he had eliminated several enemies and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Survival was not just an instinct, it was artistry. The stories of his escapes spread quickly. Enemy soldiers spoke in hushed tones about the sniper who could not be caught, who appeared where no one expected and disappeared without a trace. Each encounter made him more than a man. He became a symbol, a psychological weapon in his own right. Fear spread faster than bullets, and in war, fear could kill without firing a single shot. His ability to survive 100 ambushes was not just about dodging bullets, it was about mastering the battlefield in every sense. The terrain, the enemy's mind, the timing, and the perfect use of silence and shadow. Yet even with all his experience, every ambush was a reminder of mortality. Each one left marks on his body, invisible wounds on his psyche, memories of men he could not save. He carried these silently, understanding that survival often meant witnessing death and walking away. But these trials forged him, sharpened his instincts, and made him even more formidable. By now, the legend of the sniper who survived the impossible was no longer just whispers. It had become a psychological weapon in itself. To face him meant to face a man who had learned from every ambush, every trap, every near-death experience, and emerged not just alive, but stronger.
The battlefield was a living, breathing entity, unpredictable and unforgiving, and he had become its master. By now, he had survived dozens of ambushes, each one a brutal test of skill, nerve, and instinct. But the war had a way of escalating the stakes. Enemy commanders learned from every encounter, adapting their tactics, setting more sophisticated traps, and sending larger squads to flush him out. Yet, with each new threat, he adapted faster, thinking 3 steps ahead. Always a ghost, always unseen until the fatal moment. Survival was no longer about reaction, it was about anticipation, about reading the battlefield as if it were a chessboard, every soldier a piece to be manipulated. In one particular mission, he found himself deep behind enemy lines, alone, his unit cut off by artillery fire. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder, masking the sounds of movement. He crouched behind a shattered wall, surveying the advancing soldiers, noting the subtle cues in their posture, the rhythm of their march, the tension in their grips. It was an ambush of unprecedented scale, over 100 men sweeping through the ruins with lethal intent. Yet, he did not panic. He became part of the ruin itself, a shadow among shadows, a whisper in the wind. Each shot he fired was deliberate, each movement calculated, and when the enemy thought they had pinned him down, he vanished into a labyrinth of rubble, leaving them bewildered and enraged. His escapes were not merely about evasion, they were tactical masterpieces. He would deliberately allow a part of his position to be discovered, baiting the enemy into overextending themselves, and then exploit their mistakes with deadly precision. Bullets from afar would force soldiers to take cover, only to find themselves caught in crossfire moments later. He understood fear as a weapon, the way panic could spread like wildfire, disrupting coordination, eroding morale. By turning the enemy's confidence against them, he transformed ambushes into opportunities, his survival intertwined with their psychological collapse. Every ambush, every narrow escape left its mark on him. Bruises, scars, and fatigue accumulated, but they were badges of experience, a testament to the harsh calculus of survival. He endured pain in ways most could not fathom, embracing discomfort as a tool. Cold, hunger, exhaustion, these were constants, companions that honed his senses and sharpened his mind. His focus became legendary. While others faltered under pressure, he thrived, moving with an almost preternatural calm, assessing threats, calculating angles, and executing maneuvers with surgical precision. One chilling night, amidst the ruins of a bombed-out village, he encountered an enemy trap so meticulously planned that even he hesitated for a fraction of a second. Mines buried under snow, tripwires strung across alleyways, and gunmen lying in wait, all designed to end his streak of survival. He paused, assessing, calculating every risk. His heartbeat slowed, his breathing controlled, his mind a razor-sharp instrument. Using shadows and debris, he navigated the minefield, neutralized the gunmen with silent shots, and disappeared before reinforcements could respond. By morning, tales of his audacious escape had already begun to circulate among both allies and enemies. To survive 100+ ambushes was one thing. To do so with elegance and precision elevated him into the realm of legend. Yet it was not only the physical danger that defined him, it was the mental endurance. The weight of constant vigilance, the loneliness of solitary patrols, the burden of witnessing the deaths of comrades while surviving himself, all pressed on him relentlessly. But he transformed this pressure into clarity, letting it sharpen his intuition, refine his tactics, and strengthen his resolve. Each ambush became a study in human behavior, a puzzle to be solved. And with every solution, his reputation grew, not just as a sniper, but as a strategist, a ghost who could turn the enemy's best-laid plans into chaos. By now, the enemy understood one grim reality. To hunt him was to fight a man who was always 3 steps ahead, a predator whose battlefield was as much in the mind as it was in the terrain. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt became their constant companions. For him, survival was not a matter of chance. It was mastery, a relentless pursuit of understanding every possible variable, controlling what could be controlled, and exploiting what could not. And as the war raged on, he would continue to defy the odds, leaving behind a trail of astonished enemies and inspired comrades, the sniper who survived what no ordinary man could endure.
The snow crunched softly beneath his boots, but he barely noticed. Every sound, every vibration, every flicker of movement was etched into his consciousness. He had learned to see the battlefield in layers. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. The enemy had grown wary of him, but even with precautions, they underestimated his capacity for survival. By now, he had endured more than 100 ambushes, each one testing his limits, but he had learned a terrifying truth. The mind is as lethal as any weapon, and fear can be a sniper's ally. One evening, he found himself trapped in a valley where the enemy had coordinated a perfect crossfire. Bullets sliced through the air from every angle, and the echo of gunfire ricocheted off the rocky walls. Men would have panicked, hearts pounding, senses overwhelmed. But he did not. His mind slowed time, breaking down the chaos into individual movements, predicting where each soldier would step, calculating when each trigger would be pulled. He shifted his position slightly, allowing a few bullets to pass harmlessly by, creating the illusion of vulnerability. And then, with a single, silent breath, he struck. 2 enemy soldiers went down before their comrades could comprehend what had happened.
By the time the firing ceased, he was gone, leaving behind confusion and fear. He had mastered the art of psychological warfare long before the war had fully realized it. Every ambush was a mental chess match, and he played it relentlessly. He would leave traces, footprints that led nowhere, broken branches to suggest movement, shadows that misled the enemy's eyes. They would believe they had him cornered, only to find themselves walking into traps he had meticulously designed. Every engagement became a lesson in perception, teaching him more about his enemies than any intelligence report could. His survival depended on understanding not just terrain, but human nature. Hesitation, overconfidence, and fear became tools he wielded with precision. During one particularly brutal campaign, he was forced to navigate through a ruined village where the enemy had anticipated his approach. Mines were hidden beneath rubble, snipers lay in wait, and machine gun nests covered every street. The cold bit through his uniform, fatigue clouded his muscles, and hunger gnawed at his focus. But he moved with calculated calm. Every step was measured, every glance intentional. He detected the faintest shimmer of sunlight on a rifle barrel, felt the subtle tremor of the earth beneath hidden explosives, and timed his movements to coincide with the enemy's distractions. When he emerged on the other side, the enemy was left bewildered, their elaborate trap undone by a man they had believed mortal. Each escape deepened his legend. His comrades whispered about him in awe, while enemy soldiers muttered curses and fear-filled tales of a sniper who could vanish at will. But what truly set him apart was his capacity to endure mentally. The solitude of the hunt, the constant threat of death, the weight of responsibility for lives around him, all these would have crushed an ordinary soldier. Yet he absorbed the pressure, using it as fuel, sharpening his senses, heightening his intuition. By reading fear as easily as a map, he became untouchable, almost mythic, a force that existed beyond ordinary human limits. It was not enough to survive, he needed to dominate perception. When a unit believed he was cornered, he would appear elsewhere, striking at weak points with methodical precision. When the enemy celebrated a supposed kill, he reappeared, turning triumph into panic. Survival was just the baseline. Mastery over the battlefield's psychology was what allowed him to endure, to outthink, to remain alive when countless others perished. The war dragged on, yet he never lost focus. Each ambush, each near-death experience, each escape honed him further. His survival became a statement, a symbol of relentless cunning, discipline, and fearlessness. Every enemy who faced him carried the memory of dread, while every ally gained inspiration. By turning fear into a weapon, he transformed the simple act of surviving into an art form, a legendary tale of endurance that would echo long after the war ended.
The battlefield had become his canvas, each ambush a brushstroke of survival and strategy. By now, he had faced what would have ended most men dozens of times over, yet he remained alive, a ghost weaving through death with uncanny precision. His reputation was no longer whispered, it was feared. Enemy troops spoke of him as if he were a force of nature, impossible to predict and impossible to catch. Every engagement tested his endurance, his mind, and his skill, and yet he thrived in the chaos where others crumbled. One fateful night, he was caught in what appeared to be an inescapable trap. A valley lined with enemy squads, machine guns trained on every exit, and ambushes concealed in every shadow. Most men would have panicked, frozen by the realization that their lives were in imminent danger. But he was not most men. He had learned to observe, to anticipate, to think several moves ahead. He detected subtle patterns in the enemy's deployment, the way their eyes scanned the darkness, the slight pauses in their fire. Using the terrain to his advantage, he moved silently, exploiting the shadows, and managed to take down key threats with a calm that bordered on superhuman. When the smoke cleared, he was gone, leaving a trail of chaos behind. His genius was not limited to marksmanship. It was his ability to manipulate perception. He created illusions that led the enemy into miscalculations, exploiting their assumptions and overconfidence. Footprints that suggested movement in one direction, a shadow that hinted at presence elsewhere, a single shot to draw attention, all carefully orchestrated to turn pursuers into prey. Every ambush became a test of wit, strategy, and nerve. Surviving 100 ambushes required more than skill. It demanded a mind capable of predicting human behavior under extreme stress, and he possessed such a mind in abundance. During a campaign in dense forests, he faced one of his most harrowing encounters. Enemy soldiers, emboldened by previous successes, had coordinated a massive trap designed to end his streak of survival. He crawled through mud and fallen leaves, the weight of his rifle pressing against his shoulder, the chill of the forest seeping into his bones. Bullets tore through the undergrowth around him, snapping twigs and displacing soil, yet he remained calm. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled, every shot precise. By exploiting terrain, using silent shots to thin their numbers, and vanishing at the crucial moment, he emerged alive, the enemy left baffled and demoralized. Each encounter left marks, not just on his body, but on his psyche. Fatigue, hunger, and the haunting memories of men who had fallen surrounded him constantly. Yet he absorbed these burdens, transforming them into clarity and focus. Where others faltered under pressure, he thrived, turning fear and tension into tools of survival. His mind became a finely tuned instrument capable of processing multiple threats simultaneously, anticipating danger, and exploiting weakness. Each ambush, no matter how deadly, added to his mastery of survival, a cruel yet necessary education in the art of war. The legend of the sniper grew with each escape. Enemy soldiers spoke of him with reverence and dread, allies with admiration and relief. He became a living embodiment of resilience, cunning, and deadly precision. By mastering both the physical and psychological aspects of warfare, he turned what should have been an inevitability, death in the field, into a series of calculated victories, each encounter a testament to his skill. Surviving over 100 ambushes was no longer just survival, it was a demonstration of mastery, a performance that left both friend and foe in awe. Even in moments of extreme danger, he never lost sight of the broader strategy. Each ambush, each engagement, each tactical maneuver was part of a larger plan, a mental map of the battlefield in which he was both predator and observer. His survival depended not merely on reacting, but on anticipating, manipulating, and dominating the perceptions of everyone around him. By the time the war drew on, the sniper had become a mythic figure, an embodiment of fear and hope, a master of survival whose story would endure long after the echoes of gunfire had faded.
By now, he had survived over 100 ambushes, each more deadly than the last, each pushing him closer to the edge of human endurance. Yet, he stood unbroken, a living testament to skill, patience, and sheer willpower. His reputation had grown beyond the battlefield. Soldiers whispered his name with fear, comrades spoke of him with reverence, and enemy commanders struggled to comprehend how a single man could defy death time and again. Survival had become more an instinct. It was an art, a calculated mastery of the body, mind, and battlefield. The war was reaching its climax, and with it, the traps grew larger, more elaborate, and more lethal. Entire battalions would move in coordinated sweeps, expecting to end his story in a single decisive ambush. Yet, he approached each threat with the calm precision that had become his signature. He read the battlefield like an open book, detecting subtle patterns in enemy behavior, anticipating their moves, and exploiting every weakness. A misstep here, a hesitation there, and the enemy was undone, not by brute force alone, but by a mind that saw 3 moves ahead. In one legendary encounter, he was trapped in a ruined town, encircled by over 100 enemy soldiers. Artillery fire rained down around him, smoke obscured vision, and machine guns covered every exit. Most men would have resigned to death, their senses overwhelmed, but he moved with calculated purpose. Using the rubble for cover, timing his shots with the chaos of explosions, and manipulating the enemy's perception, he created an illusion of vulnerability. A misstep here, a feigned retreat, and the enemy was undone, not by brute force alone, but by a mind that saw 3 moves ahead. In one legendary encounter, he was trapped in a ruined town, encircled by over 100 enemy soldiers. Artillery fire rained down around him, smoke obscured vision, and machine guns covered every exit. Most men would have resigned to death, their senses overwhelmed. But he moved with calculated purpose. Using the rubble for cover, timing his shots with the chaos of explosions, and manipulating the enemy's perception, he created an illusion of vulnerability. A misplaced step, a feigned retreat, and the enemy advanced where he wanted them to. Then, like a ghost, he struck, eliminating key threats and vanishing into the ruins before reinforcements could respond. The enemy was left shattered, bewildered, and demoralized, while his comrades marveled at the audacity and brilliance of his escape. What set him apart was more than marksmanship or stealth, it was psychological mastery. He understood fear, anticipation, and perception as weapons as deadly as any rifle or artillery. Enemy soldiers hesitated, overthought, second-guessed, and panicked under his presence. Each ambush he survived became a study in human nature, each escape a demonstration of how a single mind could dominate hundreds. By manipulating expectation and exploiting instinct, he turned every ambush into an opportunity, every trap into a lesson, and every near-death encounter into a testament to his genius. Through frost, mud, blood, and fire, he endured. The battlefield became his realm, every corner and shadow a tool, every enemy action a variable to calculate. Exhaustion and pain were constants, yet they sharpened rather than dulled his senses. Where ordinary men saw chaos, he saw patterns. Where they felt fear, he found clarity. Each ambush survived reinforced the narrative. This was not luck, but the result of a relentless mind honed through experience, discipline, and a refusal to be defeated. By the end of the war, he was more than a sniper, he was a legend. Tales of his survival circulated far beyond the battlefield. To allies, he was a symbol of hope and endurance, proof that even against impossible odds, one could prevail. To enemies, he was a phantom, an embodiment of fear, a lesson in the futility of underestimating a single man with vision, skill, and nerve. He had survived over 100 ambushes, not through chance, but through mastery, the mastery of strategy, psychology, and the art of survival. Even after the guns fell silent, the memory of his exploits endured. Soldiers recounted his feats, historians marveled at his ability to survive the impossible, and the legend of the sniper who defied death became immortal. His story was not just about bullets or ambushes, but about resilience, ingenuity, and the power of the human mind to overcome any obstacle. He was the sniper who survived the unimaginable, the man who turned fear into an advantage, who defied death repeatedly, and whose legacy would echo across generations as a testament to courage, skill, and unyielding survival.